Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farooq Patafi. Today we are going to talk about something that is quite different from the discussions we usually have in this program. Usually we talk about politics, sometimes terrorism, first, sometimes foreign policy. But today we are going to talk about the issue of water shortages in the country. We have seen a discussion that grew recently and has now culminated into a very interesting development. Supreme Court of Pakistan has set up a special fund where you can also contribute and you can contribute to the production, the creation of the Amir Bhasha Dam and Mohammed Dam. It followed a very hectic discussion in the country about the construction of water reservoirs. And usually when we talk about these matters, we end up comparing our progress with India's because somehow India and Pakistan are connected through Indus Water Treaty. And then, of course, there are reports that India keeps on building or adding more modifications to its dams, while Pakistan either is inundated whenever there is rainy season. Otherwise, Pakistan might face some drought-like situation. That is one aspect. Then the previous government and the previous to that government as well kept on talking about a lot of policy changes, but the previous government ended up offering some kind of solace in the shape of national water policy in the wee hours, literally wee hours of its government. When they were leaving, they presented, approved the national water policy. And usually it is said that that policy doesn't have that kind of coherent mechanism to implement whatever has been suggested. Today we are going to talk about all these matters and more. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by Dr. Niaz Murza, our regular on this show, a political economist and a columnist of renown. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Dr. Mohammad Arshad. He is a water science expert. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Has just returned to Pakistan after spending quite a lot of time in Australia. Next to him is Dr. Shahid, a water expert. There is a difference, a nuance between the titles of the two experts, and we will ask them later what exactly is that. Dr. Saab, thank you very much for your time as well. Dr. Niaz Murza, I have to start with you. And while looking at television these days, one realizes that all of a sudden there's a lot of realization that there is water shortage or there is water crisis in the country. When we look back, 6 months back, I don't see that kind of concern. What caused it?
Well, I think the trigger came, as far as I can remember, from this international report that had come out, which pointed out to the severity of the problem in Pakistan, that it's one of the most water-stressed countries in the world. It's going to be one of the countries that will be most badly affected by climate change and so on, and the extent of wastage of water that happens. And true to our form, unfortunately, we need some kind of a push to start focusing on an issue. And it was after that report that came out that there was a lot of stories that started appearing on television, on different newspapers, and finally the government also woke up. But maybe it's a bit unfair to say that the government wasn't doing anything. You do hear that there were policies that were being framed for years and years and years, but they were just lying in the pipeline. But I think that report gave some sort of an impetus to finish the work and then release this water policy.
But when you say that it was lying there for years and years, that actually really reinforces my faith in democracy in this country. That's how we are supposed to do. Sleep on policies, right?
Well, no, I mean, that's not the purpose, but the idea is that you should deal with all these kind of problems proactively, but unfortunately we don't know. And it's not just democracy. Look at the electricity shortage issue. I mean, there's a lot of parallels between the water issue and the electricity issue, and as well as a lot of connections between them.
Right.
But the electricity issue started in the Musharraf era, and for years and years and years there was no attention to it until we started
but
having massive
I
blackouts.
remember growing up in Pakistan. I remember my own childhood days when we used to have load shedding in this country.
Load
as
shedding,
well.
but this extent, 10 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours. That's
But I
quite
digress.
unusual.
We have to talk about water first. And water science expert, Dr. Arshad, is with us. Your take on this issue. How come this realization came to this country so quickly that everybody on television, I mean, policymakers are talking about it, judiciary is talking about it, so many other people. What is the trigger? I understand there might be a foreign report that was published, but there must be something inherent as well. For example, the Chief Justice, even before release of this report, was frequenting Karachi, and he was talking about water shortages there, at least drinking water for the people. Sir.
Yeah, thank you for being part of this panel. It's pleasure. Coming to the point, particularly, I think it's a very positive sign that as a nation, we have recognized water as an issue formally. I would say in the last 40 years. And
is it an organic realization, or is it some kind of artificial
one? I say it's a genuine one.
Okay.
It's a genuine one. Both we have, let me explain the two terms to clarify the discussion, water shortage and water scarcity. Scarcity is an economic term in which some resources like unequally distributed or due to some market mechanism, its availability becomes
becomes difficult.
Scarce.
Yeah.
But shortage is a physical thing. So now we have both things, like inequality, unequal distribution, management, as well as physical shortage of water. So I would say that the problem is real, and it is because Pakistan is not alone in this crisis. Like the very developed world, even America, if we see that there was a 3 years long drought in California, and they were struggling for that. Same situation is in South Africa. In Australia, all arid and semi-arid areas in the world, they are facing this problem. But the difference is that they had started their journey, the developed countries, like 30, 40 years before, and we are just realizing it right now. So the main question is that we have missed the timeline. The things that we should have done it in over 70s, four decades before. Now we are just starting it.
But Dr. Saab, you'll appreciate that we don't have any time machine to go back and fix it.
But I think
we have to do something today or
but
never.
I think there are solutions. I'm not disappointed at all, because Almighty Allah has blessed this country with a lot of natural resources. So let me give
Water
one
being
example.
one of them.
Let me compare it with one example, single example. In Australia, Perth is a city of almost 2.5 million people.
Right.
And the rainfall is like 1/4, 250 millimeters per year. Similar situation, if we compare it to Islamabad, we are facing water shortages here, particularly in summer months, where we have rainfall more than 1 meter. So this is our level of inefficiency, that what we are doing.
We are wasting that water, right?
So we are not managing it, I would say that.
Right. And something has to be done about it. Dr. Shahid, your take on the matter, sir?
I think it's just not that quick that, as we are saying, that it's have quickly evolved in this kind of debate.
We used to have this periodic revival or discussion of Kalabagh Dam, but hardly anything more. So, and we saw so many simultaneous things happening right now.
I think that was kind of misplaced arguments against and for Kalabagh Dam that took us that long without having any decision on the matter. In 1999, I remember there was a panel discussion on food security, as Dr. Saab mentioned, in that water and electricity connections, was also try to make a connection with the food security also. Right. I argued that we are fast moving towards severe water shortages. Okay. There were some reports and then drought in Balochistan at that time. And there was some reports that our per capita sort of availability is falling fast.
You're
that was
talking
also
about-
due to the increased.
Dr. Saab, you're talking about the discussion that took place before the military coup of 1999.
It was just few months before that.
Just a few months before that. Because people think that Pervez Musharraf also brought some modern lexicon into our political discussion. Before him,
No,
maybe a lot of things were not being discussed.
because at that time I'm an agricultural economist. My focus was on food security.
Right.
Just after my PhD, I was working on that, and I was basically arguing that it's not just the production. We'll have to seek a sort of infrastructural, institutional, many sort of changes if we are serious about our food security and water infrastructure.
It's a very good argument.
Water infrastructure was one of that.
And
We
people
have
were
had the largest canal irrigation system in the world, and we are least concerned about its maintenance and improvement. That's what Dr. Arshad mentioned about 60% losses, conveyance losses.
Actually, he hasn't mentioned that on air. We were having this discussion before we went on air. I'm going to come to that.
So I'm saying that then came in the Indian efforts to enhance their storage capacity on the rivers that flow into Pakistan, and then in this water treaty came. We brought that in and saying that they don't have the right to build those dams, but still.
Not
we
the
did
right
it.
to build those dams, or actually add those modifications that are the gates. Because through the gates, they control water.
But we kept quiet on those sort of infrastructural development for a long time, and then we also ignored the required investments in water resources in Pakistan.
Right.
That has led us to the point. The
And
situation
that
that
is-
we expected will happen in 2025.
Okay.
We are almost
Only-
already facing it.
We are 7 years away from that prediction.
No.
But reality has landed already. Okay, Dr. Niaz Mirza, let us talk about lack of consensus. Why do you think we lack such consensus? Because it is such a crucial matter. Sindh needs it, Punjab needs it, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Balochistan, other parts of Pakistan. Why exactly is it that we have been sleeping since 1960s? We haven't done much.
Well, of course, water scarcity and shortage, these are nationwide problems. But then, you have different solutions for dealing with these problems. It could consist of, water storage, water conservation, so many options that exist. So unfortunately, the option that has been talked about the most has been in terms of increasing storage, and that too in terms of, specific projects and specific places. So for example, the biggest issue has been Kalabagh Dam.
Right.
So given how diverse Pakistan is from north and south, the Kalabagh Dam will have different kind of outcomes for people in different provinces. So it might be beneficial for say Punjab, for agriculture in Punjab, but it's going to have a very different outcome for Sindh, which is downstream, as well as for KP, where the storage might take place. So I think the consensus has been because you start focusing on activity rather than the outcome.
Right.
Because if you think in terms of outcomes, then different options come up. It's not only in terms of building this particular dam. Then you broaden your horizon and you start looking at different options.
Right.
But the problem in Pakistan is that we like to think big dams.
Right.
And
Yeah, but
expensive.
Pakistan has a problem as well.
Yeah.
Silting, sedimentation also
Exactly.
happens very quickly.
Very quickly.
So if you have small dams, that might be a problem. And that's why you want to have the bigger water reservoirs. The problem, Dr. Saab, I understand with Kalabagh must be there. But you have to realize that for 20 years we have been talking about, Bhasha Dam, the Amir Bhasha Dam.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen any movement, with the exception of the feasibility that now came in front of us. We haven't seen much.
Yeah, and I think it again has to do with the political economy of this whole debate. The thing is that water scarcity and water shortage affects different segments of society in a different way.
Yeah.
So the rich and the powerful, they are assured of their supply. They have disproportionate control over the supply, whereas the people who suffer immediately and most are the poor people.
Are you telling us that Pakistani people don't have any way of forging an accord that actually resolves that problem?
Well, the obvious, mechanism is, of course, the democratic process. If it's well oiled and working well within the country, if the country has, sorted out its conflicts and it has, come up with, ways of managing conflicts and differences of opinion, then it's easy to tackle these issues. But the problem has been that, for so many years, there hasn't been a democratic process in place, and then when even it comes back, it's not working very well. There's always threats to it. So unfortunately, we don't have very good mechanisms, processes for coming to national consensus.
Okay.
And then we think of solutions in very narrow terms, as I mentioned earlier. Just start thinking immediately in terms of dams, rather than looking at a broad range of options within which
and
dams
we are going to explore those options as well. But Dr. Arshad, your take on Kalabagh Dam, because that is also very important. And there is this perception. Before coming to this program, you were telling me that this is by far the best, possible, technically best possible, reservoir. Explain to us. Is it going to affect Sindh adversely? And is it going to add to the suffering of Nushaira, as it is said that the seasonal inundation might increase?
I think first, all the water experts, they have consensus that the major dams, including the Kalabagh, should be constructed.
Okay.
It should be the first priority. So with every dam, there are like some social issues, some political issues attached to it. So there has to be a platform to discuss, to open the dialogue, and make consensus. Similarly, I think
a platform like CCI?
I would say that on a much lower level, today I have the opportunity, and I would suggest that we should have a National Water Commission who should take the lead on it. Like there should be think tank, that should be the platform who bring on board consensus of different provinces, sit them together. It may take couple of years to develop, but always there are solutions, there are dialogues. I think various countries, they have gone through this process. Let me quote the example of Australia. Like there were strong contests on water on Murray-Darling Basin between 5 different states, and it took more than a decade. And finally, they reached a consensus, and all those water initiatives were implemented. And today, I think Australia, they are the world leaders in water management.
Okay.
So it's a long-term process.
But
so there has to be a mechanism.
I understand that you have to add the recommendations as well. But regarding Kalabagh Dam, you have to tell me, is it going to exacerbate the water stress in Sindh? And is it going to add to the inundation of various parts of KP?
I would say the major issue of Sindh is like with the water releases normally which goes to the sea. Like if the dam is constructed, what will happen? Seawater will intrude.
This is
just one assumption.
Kotri
downstream.
Okay.
But normally there has been technical and scientific studies conducted on that, and that is a part of feasibility of that this much water, around 10 million acre field, should be released.
Yeah, if it doesn't go, the ocean's water might actually come back, something of that sort?
It is a natural phenomena.
Okay.
It happens, like every 3-4 years we have flood, and there are detailed studies which state that.
It is the only complaint of Sindh, or they have
I think
other problems?
that is a major concern.
Mangroves, other issues?
It is related with the saltwater intrusion.
Okay,
so
okay, that is quite interesting. And is it going to affect KP negatively?
I would say that if you look at the previous reports of WAPDA, and other technical reports,
Yeah.
it does not say of any kind of bigger risk. Like there are mitigation options, but all those options have been assessed and those have been technically feasibly okay, I would
Yeah,
say
so
that.
something like 15 years ago, we were told by WAPDA itself that they have fixed this problem of water, of flooding in these parts. And that is quite interesting. Even today, it hasn't been translated into any kind of reality. It hasn't been propagated on television. Dr. Shahid, your take on Kalabagh Dam?
So, as I was saying, the difference between the scientist and political economist, in economics, we always talk about the second best solutions also.
Okay.
So, even
Why
if,
second best?
even if technically Kalabagh Dam might be seen as the best solution, and then the way it has been politicized, the way we mishandled and didn't have any serious debate on the issue. I'm concerned that if we initiate that debate again, that might take another decade or so without
Why?
reaching any solution. Because
Are we lacking in that kind of
because we
capacity
lack
build consensus?
we lack serious debate on the issue. It's more political debate than
So
the
it
serious
hasn't-
technical debate.
It has
There
been
are-
going on for
as-
decades.
As there are other options available
No, they
that
are
we
not.
need immediately before we
Bear me
jump
out.
on the conclusion
Just
that
tell
whether
me, recently I was told, I was informed by another water expert that usually while it is possible to build more dams on on River Indus, there is none that you can build apart from this one on River Kabul. And India has recently offered Afghanistan its help and financial help as well to build a reservoir on Kabul that will actually control water flow to Pakistan as well. Is it correct or is it not?
What I'm trying to say is that we need to go for more comprehensive water policy.
Okay.
And then we have
And I'm going to talk about water policy as well. But you have to actually resolve this
I
issue.
will. As we have limited resources to invest into our water resources, and then we are compelled to invest, and if we will delay it, we will face more consequences. I would argue that we need to find immediate the sort of reservoirs or the subsoil water storages and improving our water infrastructure, using the other 3 rivers that are not being we've been deprived of the water in the Indus Water Treaty.
Our western waters.
Yes, their sort of basis can be used for the floodwater storage with little investment. We are ignoring all those kind of infrastructure type investments for the last 3 decades.
And this is the galling bit. Until 6 months ago, nobody, and I'm talking about nobody, was talking about these matters, even though these are existential issues. Nobody was talking about it. Even today, when one good man has taken an initiative, most of the discussion I see on social media is mocking each other rather than contributing to that. What exactly is wrong with us?
I would say that it's not nobody. There was a good debate and discussion on Indian water aggression designs, including what you mentioned, their help to Afghanistan on Kabul River and the way they are building dams in India. And then there are rivers flowing from India to Bangladesh also, and they didn't get into any kind of Indus Water Treaty type of treaty on that. So
But our side is happy
that
that we
treaty was
have
the beginning
Indus
of the water crisis in Pakistan.
Right. I don't know. I've been told that that was perhaps Indus Water Treaty is one of the strengths of this country, not a weakness. And that after doing that, we actually changed the quality of our water channels as well, and we worked on it. And we adapted the system to it. I don't know whether it is
We do
true.
not see any country where the river flowing into 2 or 3 countries, and the whole river was handed over to one country, and then deprived of the almost a large part of Pakistan.
So should we cancel Indus Water Treaty?
This is too late now, and at least we
So
have to
why
have
are-
negotiations in.
Sir, Dr. Saab, you have to realize that whenever we talk about past, I understand that one has to take stock of past, but we end up discussing past as if it is changeable. It is not. It is gone. We can do whatever we can do today, right? So that is an important thing. So you want to add something to Indus Water Treaty or your perception of it? Because I want to now to talk about water, the new water policy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm of course not a water expert to, give any sort of a technical opinion. But, what I would like to point out is, again, going back to, having a national dialogue on these issues. And, my colleagues here have mentioned a number of reports. So the question is, why doesn't the government have a clear communication policy on this? Why doesn't the government take initiative and bring all the different stakeholders together on these issues, have some national workshops?
Why do our universities don't have that kind of investment in this particular field? Why don't our television channels invest at all in these matters?
Yeah.
We don't see any discussion. It can be limited to government's failure. We can say that the governments have failed, but don't you think it is some kind of societal failure?
Well, it is, of course, certainly broader than that. And, the government does emerge out of society.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, it reflects, whatever the problems there are in society as well. But then ultimately, it's the responsibility of the government. It's more well-resourced than civil society, than an individual university. So I think it just goes back to the issue that, we are not proactive enough. We should have been having these debates years ago so that, we could at least develop some consensus. And then again, as I said, look at a broad range of options so that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. There are different options that are being mentioned in terms of, water conservation, pricing, usage of, more advanced technologies like drip irrigation, then, aquifer recharging and so on. So, rather than just thinking in terms of one project, maybe we can have 4 or 5, 6 different projects which give us the same kind of capacities,
Right.
storage capacities, access and so on. So again, it's a matter of, continuous dialogue through various channels.
And we have to have that, but I don't see that kind of quality research either on the matter. Dr. Arshad, have you, off the top of your head, if I ask you to name a couple of books on Pakistan water problems, can you recommend a couple of books?
I think I've
Have you come
gone
across such
through-
books, sir?
come across, but I think they are not well propagated. There are very few, which is like,
Why?
I would say, academic literature.
Why?
Our
Our researchers don't need a career.
Because, yeah, number one, this is a lacking part. In present time, why we are saying that now water is a science. It is not only engineering discipline. It is linked with the economy. It is linked with the food security. It is linked even with the national peace and stability.
Yeah.
So it has a very wider dimension in present time. So we lack those expertise, that water has not been taught in Pakistan, looking at all these dimensions. Second, water has been, I would say, water governance has been a missing narrative in our, I would say, national politics. So that has to be a part of it, because water is always politics.
Yeah, but
There's a lot of politics.
Karachi
attached with
not getting water is a serious issue. I saw flashes of reports 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Nobody has the wisdom to connect the dots and see that it is such a problem that is affecting Islamabad also, maybe Lahore, parts of Lahore, umpteen other places. Nobody talks about
I think
these matters.
we have solutions. Solutions are not very difficult.
So
As I
I'm not talking
mentioned,
about solutions right now. I'm talking about the attention to detail and attention to the problem. I don't see academic work. I don't see academic
step back,
departments.
because we do not have those cadre of water experts here in Pakistan.
Why not, sir?
Because it is not a priority, and it is
Whose? priority.
It is not a priority of the market. Like we do not have job creation for those experts. Like there are very few opportunities in government departments. Private sector has not been fully established. And if we see in the developed world, that is the private sector and big companies who have made a lot of contribution in terms of like feasibility studies, science, and bringing to the solution.
But
so we have to create a market.
You just gave me idea of at least a dozen startups in this very field.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it. I can see it. Why can't the people or investors see it?
I think it's a seriousness. What we are seeing that is a lack of commitment by the government. But this is now very much like in the mass media as well as electronic media, in the politics. This is fortunate, I would say.
No,
that
but my concern
least-
is when I asked you whether it is organic, whether it originated from somewhere or it is artificial. The media is handling it the way you handle something artificial. That means easy come, easy go. Today, you will be focusing on this matter quite a lot. Tomorrow, people change and boom, the attention is gone. What happens then?
I think I would say it is not the case. I would disagree. The real thing is that there is a real shortage. This is a global crisis, and Pakistan is a part of it, being its location. And I wonder, nobody talks about the population size. We have same amount of water today as we had in 1970s.
Okay.
So we haven't done something in the last 40 years. So we
My
like
CJ
twice
does
as
though.
much as.
I mean, whether people like it or not, I love this about my Chief Justice of Pakistan, that he talks about these matters a lot. He spoke about the population control as well, having 7 children in one family, and then population, doesn't increase, it multiplies. But Dr. Shahid, you can talk about this matter as well. Here's the question, something that you hinted at the start, that the national water policy, when it was created, it was not broad-based, people were not consulted, it came out of nowhere, and then it lacks some kind of implementation mechanism that can stand on its 2 feet. Am I right in understanding what you were saying?
Yeah. When I say that we need to have a comprehensive water policy,
This one is not comprehensive.
no, I mean that we have to have a good policy on our underground water, recharge systems, sort of licensing or some kind of permissions
Water markets.
on the pumping underground water, some kind of water markets, forcing people to pay the way they are wasting it if it's being wasted. And then if we are pumping more than the recharge, we are playing with the underground resources, water resources also. And as you mentioned that in the cities we are having shortages. For the time being, we felt alarmed and then kept quiet
Yeah,
again.
but
In
this time
Islamabad,
the focus seems to be political.
Yes, let me talk a little bit about Islamabad, the only well-planned city in Pakistan, where we have the Rawal Dam to offer all the kind of water needs of Islamabad. Whenever we have the shortages, we talk about bringing more water from somewhere.
Okay.
We never talk about the use of the rainwater harvesting and then compelling new housing to build rainwater harvesting systems so that they can be used to irrigate your lawns, wash your cars and in the washrooms, and then saving the drinking water, and then we have enough water in Islamabad then. Okay. And then the same, we have no water harvesting policy in the areas where we have almost drought-like conditions.
Right.
We do not have any policy to save the water.
Let me go back
when
to
we have
Dr.
an
Arshad
abundant of water.
and ask his opinion.
I would say that over national water policy, it is very comprehensive.
It
With
is.
respect, I would disagree with Dr. Saab. And it is written for the 21st century. Like I can name 23 major points outlined it. It says about storages, store your water, make your big reservoir. It talks about rainwater harvesting and micro watershed management. It emphasizes on groundwater regulation and licensing.
Okay.
It emphasizes on groundwater recharge, that store your water in dams as well as underground. It emphasizes on water conservation, that use micro irrigation and water saving devices. And it recommends formation of National Water Council and provincial integrated water resource management authorities to oversee the implementation of these. So I think there are a number of points which have been covered. We should fully own it. I own it as an expert. It's very comprehensive, but the major issue is that who is going to put it into implementation. As I mentioned earlier, that
There should
we
be a water
have to
commission.
have some mechanism, a kind of other bodies which has been happened in other parts of the world, developed world, where water was a crisis and implementation becomes problem.
So its
we
own
need to
water-
construct a national water commission. I am emphasizing on that.
So the provision of a water council is not good enough.
I think it's a
Prime
larger
Minister is
it's a
sitting-
larger body that will oversee maximum once or twice a year
Okay.
the progress of the work. But I think we need a cadre of water think tank
Okay.
who can deal with the day-to-day matters. Like water has very dimension in the policy. There has to be a section on groundwater,
Somebody
on
like,
surface water management, on water economics, on water pricing.
Somebody like Indus Water Commission.
I would say not like Indus Water Commission, but we should construct this water commission with a true spirit, which has a strong think tank of water expert who can roll out all the things outlined in the policy into implementation.
Okay. Sir, you want to say something?
Yeah, when I say we need comprehensive water policy, I know all these issues are mentioned in the policy. But when I say still it's not comprehensive policy that we would like to see is, does this policy talk about the water shortages caused by those 3 rivers that were closed? How are we going to address the water shortages in those areas? Does this policy talk about that the areas that depend upon just 1 minute.
But with due respect, is it not true that after we signed in this water treaty, we rearranged our water channels so that those areas can be cultivated as well?
No, I'm coming with it. Still, many areas I can start naming, if you Farhan Dogar to other areas, where they depend for their irrigation and their sort of drinking water on the canal water, and they are facing frequent water shortages. And then we feel that our canals are meant only for irrigation, and then we are not bringing in the drinking water needs of those communities living along, and then allocating water resources for the drinking water supplies for those communities first, who are facing serious shortages of drinking water, and they are compelled to drink water that's unfit for drinking.
Right.
So that kind of issues are not addressed in this policy.
I was under the impression that certain
It is a
aspects,
part of
provisions
that.
were
It's
given.
a part of that.
But I have to, you finish that point and then I have to go to
Yeah,
Dr.
just
Naz.
one point. Like Pakistan is a signatory of implementation of Sustainable Development Goal.
Okay. SDG.
Goal 6, particularly SDG 6, 6.1, 6.2, it emphasizes, and we promise with the international community that by 2030 we will provide safely managed water to every individual of Pakistan. I think it's a very ambitious and task, but
Sir, I have
this
to-
is this
you-
is
I
this is
have
a
to
part
go to
of
the third-
policy.
yeah.
There is a very much ownership in the national climate change policy as well as in our
Okay.
national water
When was the
policy.
climate change policy passed, sir?
It's back in, I think, if I could remember, in 2012 or 13, yeah.
12 or 13?
Yeah.
I'm sure we have done a lot after that.
Yeah.
So with due respect, it was news to me that Pakistan has EPA. It is quite empowered. If it wants to work, it can have it can pull its weight. But sadly, somehow, even in communication, something is missing in Pakistan. I think the thing that is missing is called imagination. We don't have the kind of imagination to foresee our problems. So, do you think that in another year we will be hearing about these issues?
Well, I think the important thing is that the coming elections produce a strong government, fully empowered government, which is able to deal with not just the water problem. There's so many issues facing Pakistan, financial, economic, physical, and so on, social, political. But the way things are going, it looks more and more unlikely that we will have a strong government coming out of these elections, and the way elections are being engineered and managed, it seems more and more like that we'll have a hung government.
I know that you wanted to comment on political situation as well, and I respectfully disagree on many things.
Yeah.
But sir, with due respect, while we are discussing this, the governments might change. There might be a weak government, there might be a strong government, but we are the same people.
Yeah.
Can we not have the kind of imagination that is needed to focus on these matters? You're a columnist.
Yeah, I mean,
You're a political economist.
That's
How
what I've
many
been-
columns have you written on water?
well, I'm not a water expert, so
No.
I wouldn't dare to write.
I mean, with due
something-
respect, we can. I'm also a columnist. We
Yeah.
get away with writing on things. Whatever
Yeah, I
we
mean,
want
I
to
can
talk.
write about it in a general way, and I have referred to it in the list of major problems that Pakistan is facing. But beyond that, in terms of coming up with solutions, that is not for me. But I can point out the fact that we need a strong national debate on these issues, a fully empowered
We do.
government which can focus on these
Absolutely.
issues. And I'm not sure whether we're
And
going to
this
have
is
that.
what is expected of us, right?
Yeah.
So you see my point that the kind of focus that was needed is not there in the country,
Yeah.
and that has to be changed.
Yeah,
Right, sir?
yeah.
I'm actually told that we have to conclude the program, and I was told that this is going to be the last comment, but you can add your one bit.
I would like to make a quick comment on the SDGs that Arshad mentioned.
So-
Before that, there was Millennium Development Goals. Even the world community was not serious about those Millennium Development
I
Goals.
want to be an
What did-
optimist,
No,
sir.
no, no,
And
no.
I want to
no,
leave
no,
this
no, no.
discussion on an
What did
optimist note.
our constitution even provide the rights to the people for food security and access to water? If we are not serious about our constitution, how much we will expect that our governments will be serious on SDGs?
SDGs are important, Constitution is supreme and it is important, but the people of Pakistan will be suffering. And that is something that is quite visible before our eyes. If that doesn't change our heart, maybe nothing will. So I'm told that we have to conclude the program. Dr. Zab, you want to add something quickly?
I would say that I'm very ambitious,
Okay.
and inshallah,
And
in
optimistic
coming
as well.
years-
And optimistic,
Optimistic, definitely. I think
Okay.
we have seen those solutions in different parts of the world with our ears and eyes, and those are practically possible in Pakistan. God has blessed this
Right.
country with a lot of resources,
Resource.
including water. It's a matter of managing it in the right way.
as well. Right. And someday, hopefully, we are going to have that kind
Inshallah.
of prowess to actually do that as well. Dr. Niaz Mirza, I see that you're angling to leave already. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. Dr. Muhammad Arshad, thank you very much, sir, for your time as well. Dr. Shahid, thank you very much. It has been quite instructive, a discussion. Thank you very much as well. Viewers, you have listened to our participants. Discussion, of course, has to continue. But the problem so far is that while we talk about everything, and we talk a lot, but when it comes to the things that matter, we hardly pay that kind of attention or make it a topic of our discussion. It is important that now that the Chief Justice of Pakistan and the Army itself has also both of them have contributed to a fund, that we keep the focus on these matters. And now that we have a national water policy, we keep on asking ourselves what is missing. If something is, let us try building consensus to add that bit as well. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching us. Take care.